Sponsored by the Dunleary Rattown Local Enterprise Office. You're listening to Business Eye on Dublin South FM.
Happy Easter to everybody and welcome to Business Eye. Simon, how are you? Are you all set for Easter? Have you all set for Easter eggs, I should say?
Christmas 2025, I'm ready for.
2025.
I'm good. It's a busy old week. And, thankfully, they're germinating seeds of things starting to open. But are they opening quick enough? We'll get into all of that, Joe.
We will indeed. Well, look, as I say to everyone, happy Easter. As we say, it's 1 year on and we are still in lockdown with a promise of some light at the end of the tunnel. 1 year ago, lockdown was placed on us to flatten the curve. Or is it just flattening the economy? Churches, homeless, old and young, schools, nursing homes, business, mental health, financial problems, masks. Stay 2 meters apart. Stay home, isolation. Doctors and scientists have been silenced for speaking out. Travel, fear feeding, recession, and corruption. People are starting to see that things are not making sense, but why? The minority are fast becoming the majority. There's a tipping point. I was once told that people have to get angry for things to change, to get results. Anger, but not violence. Bad decisions, unnecessary lockdown, in my opinion. How can we fix our country? How can we fix our economy? That's what I want to ask today. Simon, so who have we got to share the madness with us today?
Well, that's a great introduction. And we have two really strong, powerful guests. First up, we have Adi McDave. I hope that did I pronounce that correct?
Adi McDorvey.
McDorvey. Okay.
McDorvey.
Welcome. And so Adi is a master goldsmith, a jewelry business owner, and has worked in the US and China for many years. And China is interesting because I've done business. I lived in Australia for 10 years. And so I'm wondering if there are any current comparisons with China with what's happening in Ireland. And Ivor Cummings completed a chemical engineering degree at UCD in 1990. He's since spent over 25 years in corporate technical leadership and management and spent the last 12 months researching the COVID data. And, just welcome, Ivor. It's good to see you as well. And from my perspective, I've been saying increasingly, it's not, of course, there is a virus, but for me, it's not the virus that has us in lockdown. It's government policy. And I can prove that because there are plenty of countries in the world who aren't in lockdown right now. So that's my own personal view. It's government policy right now, not the virus. But over to you, Joe.
Everyone seems to be scratching their head. And the more people that we speak to on a daily basis because of within business, they are scratching their head. And a lot of people who are, we can talk about the suicide rates and we can talk about the effect that it's having on the economy as well. And even if you look at Brussels there's been the courts have said that they need to open up everything within the next 30 days. And my question to both of you, and I'll start with yourself, Ivor. In your opinion, how did we get to here? How did we get to here?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. And a lot of people won't realize what the answer is. And basically, to put it bluntly, so in February 2020, Bruce Aylward of the WHO was in China discussing their stuff with the authorities. And he had a press conference and he held up a chart and he showed the classic Gompertz curve of the rise and fall of this disease. It's a flu-like illness. And he pointed at the curve and said, China made this curve turn down with their lockdowns. It's fantastic. And everyone in the world needs to do this now. And the WHO and Tedros went with that. And then afterwards, Italy had a problem in their far north where they have profound metabolic issues in the aged and hospital capacity issues. We saw a lot of kind of dramatic images. And then that caused the UK to trigger. And we had Neil Ferguson at Imperial College, who was 10 times too high in his predictions of how many would die. And that helped things along. And the whole thing just collapsed. I mean, recently, Neil Ferguson, or late December, was in the British Times, and he said, we never thought we could actually do this lockdown stuff in the West. But then Italy did it. And these are his words. And we realized we could. You know, very telling words. So basically, a profoundly unscientific intervention, which was ruled out in the WHO October 2019 extensive pandemic guidelines. It was ruled out in the Irish and UK guidelines, and they allowed for much higher death rates in the flu epidemic than we've seen, but they still ruled out all of this isolation of healthy. All of that science, 50 years, was flushed down the toilet, and everyone went lockdown crazy. And then the narrative, of course, and I knew this would happen in April, the narrative had to say, look, the lockdown worked, even though the curve had seasonally collapsed in Europe by April, May last year. The narrative had to say, we were right, it worked. And that's a political imperative. I mean, even if the guys themselves realized over time, okay, this is nonsense. We have lots of publications coming out showing in empirical data that the lockdown didn't really change the shape much. They can never admit it. And the rest is almost history. And if you add in a whole load of bad actors, international organizations who have massive vested interest in lockdown and PPE and medications and all that stuff, here we are, a year later, 3 weeks to flatten the curve. Remember that? 3 weeks to protect the hospitals. Where did that go? Here we are.
You know, we can talk about the science of it, and we know that there's a parallel road here. One is on the science level side, and one is the political side. And it seems to be that all focus is on the political. Every decision that they made is on the political. And there's this science. Now, science, what is science? Science is there to show something and to test to prove it if it's right or wrong. But it's all like, we seem to be just forgetting about this, and we seem to think that it's political and entertainment. Like if you look at a lot of the mainstream media and look at a lot of the shows, they've turned COVID, in my opinion, into entertainment and fear feeding. And then the political, when the Taoiseach or anyone in a political party stands up and they tell us this, some news, and they're grinning and smiling about it. And we're kind of going, hang on, are you so far removed from reality that you don't know what's going on in this country? Like, look at the big pay rises. And there's a disconnect between us. I'd hate to say this, really, but there's a disconnect between us and them. And I'd never, ever thought I'd say that. Am I mad? Am I mad?
No, I mean, the disconnect has always been there. You know, we're a country that, Ireland has been a country that for, who can remember, we've just gone along and done our thing. We tend not to be oppressed, to fight back on anything. The last time was the water taxes. And the government, what did the government do there? They labelled the people out on the marches as yobs and unemployed. And they're doing the same tactic here. Anybody who voices an opinion on this that doesn't follow the narrative of the government is labelled, you name it, pick one, far right, tinfoil hat wearer, unemployed yob, uneducated. And so people, that's what RTE is feeding the people right now about these lockdowns. And
there does seem to be, and I can be a little bit objective because I was born in England, although an Irish family, and I've lived in Australia, but there does seem to be, I'll choose my words carefully, a culture of opportunism right now in Ireland. And I'll give you an example. The CEO of the NHS in the UK recently self-volunteered a pay cut, right? And his salary, I think, is just over half of the salary of the head of the HSE in Ireland. Why? My question is, why is it half?
Well, in terms of vilifying as well, I mean, this is classic propaganda. So I'm a World War II buff. I've enormous amount of documentaries watched and books read, and it's just an absolute parallel in many ways. And there was a statement back then that always accuse your opponent of what you yourself are doing. So there's an enormous amount of gaslighting and vilification of anyone who's against the narrative. And you see that when the narrative has been set, everyone's invested in the narrative, and the narrative is too big to fail. When you get there, you're going to see all of this kind of madness. So I've just watched it from afar for 6 months, and it's astounding. The parallels with totalitarian regimes of the past are stunning. And I know people say, oh, you should never compare to, say, the Holocaust. I'm not comparing to the Holocaust. I'm comparing to the mechanisms in 1930s with how you subvert a population and get a big idea or a big lie and then maintain it and grow it until your people have turned to blancmange.
It's been well played. They have well played. The churches are closed, the pubs are closed, and that's where dissent historically in Ireland has come from. You cut that away from people. They got nowhere. You can't meet. Everybody's afraid to meet. The propaganda of the bad element has succeeded there.
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. You decided to define the rules that were being implemented, and you opened up your premises. What was when was that decision made, and why?
The decision was made about 6 months ago, but I had to get the agreement of my wife. My wife is Chinese, and she comes from that regime, and she has friends that were involved in Tiananmen Square, who are in England now, and their lives have been ruined. They can't see the family, they can't go back, and anybody was well. So she did not want me to stick my head up above war. She just says, go on, do your thing, be quiet about it. You can sell online, you can do click and collect, people can come into you. And, you know, we had a back and forth in this until she was in agreement with me what's going on. Because if you don't make a stand, it's just going to snowball. I couldn't take it anymore. My convictions were, I need to open this shop. And so I planned for it on March 20th, which was the 1 year anniversary that I closed and wasn't able to open again when they gave us an opportunity there. What was it, in October or November? There was a short little window there they gave us, because you had to have everything. You had to have the Perspex shields up and the mask and everything. I just wasn't able to do that in the shops. More money to be spent for a couple of weeks window. But what made me open up was the fact that if I opened up, maybe some other people would follow me. Maybe other people in the town would do the same. And that's it. People said, I'm brave. Brave about what? I'm just trying to make a living. I'm just trying to make a living for my family, have the shop. Oh, I closed the door right now. The door is closed because we're doing this interview. And just before we started, there's people into me. So it was based on what Ivor said earlier as well. Myself and my wife, we knew what had gone on in China and what had gone on with Imperial College. You know, Imperial College were visited by Xi Jinping. I think it's the only college he visited in England on a 4-day trip. You know, that speaks. You know, we don't have RTE in the house as well, mostly because my kids are bilingual and they like to watch Chinese shows, and my wife is Chinese. You know, so I've been in America for 15 years before the 10 years in China, and so it just happened that, you know, you know what, if I had been watching the news on RTE, I might have hesitated. I probably think I would have, because of the way they've hammered home the fear factor on this, you know.
So when you opened up, what was the mood of people within the town? You know, were people sort of complaining, or are you getting much support? And
in the beginning, no, I was a murderer. I was going to kill people. I was going to kill old people. I give you a funny one. When I opened up, I did think that, you know, I was going to be attacked. I certainly was attacked online and continue to be attacked online. I mean, I have to take a deep breath when I open up my laptop to go into Twitter, because, oh my God, what's this going to be now? You know, I'm Hitler. But when I tell you a funny one, when I opened up, the first customer in was a middle-aged woman. She was petite. And I say petite, and the reason why I noticed, first of all, that she was petite, because she was wearing the mask, the medical mask, which covered her whole head. It was halfway up her eyes. It didn't even fit right. And she was standing at the door, and I smiled and said hello. She wouldn't answer me. She wouldn't look at me. And she took out of her pocket, it must have been like this size, the gel, you know, the alcohol gel. And she squeezed a big lump into her hands that was way too big. And you know that stuff. If it's never going to dry. You're going to be rubbing it for like 5 minutes. So there she was standing, and she realised 5 minutes rubbing it in. And I'm going, oh, here we go. And you could see the anger in her. You could see the anger in her. And she was so angry. She just says, I suppose you're an anti-masker. And I goes, no, if you want to wear a mask in my shop, you can wear a mask.
But has the mood changed within the town as well? Is more people now supporting you?
Yeah.
Is there more businesses opening up?
I had a lot of people in the beginning who were like that. They were coming in to take a look and to look down their nose at me. And within the town, there was like a trouble. My neighbours wouldn't talk to me for a little bit. He now talks to me, but he's not like I did. So I'm the talk of the town here. I'm the talk of the town. Then I start getting support, and I get a lot of people in, business people in, retailers in. What has been happening, even yesterday was the same thing. People coming in to wish me support, but telling me they're doing click and collect. They're doing click and collect, which is, of course, against the government mandate as well. And, I'm doing click and collect. And my answer to that is, so that's a euphemism. Click and collect is a euphemism for I'm secretly open, but I'm not fighting back.
I got a question. So I heard Paschal Donohoe the other day on another radio channel talking about his grave concern that there are big groups of people gathering near where I live here in Milltown and along the canal and stuff. And he was talking about this, right? But I see them every day, because I go for a walk and I see them and they're coming back every day and I don't see the guards moving them, right? So there seems to be a disconnect. Politicians are saying this. People are still doing this. The guards aren't moving. Ivor, you're nodding. What does this all mean?
Yeah, so I have some contacts there. I checked, it was late last summer with contact I have in the guards. And basically I was told, well, what do you think? Because I was asking the question, the guards are smart. They're investigative people. They're analytical minds generally, and they've been around the block. So I said, there's no way they can have fallen for this craziness. And sure enough, the answer was, well, not really. But it's a corporate system almost now. There's a new CEO from the north, and the government mandate will be followed to the letter. And everyone knows that. So I think what you have is most of the guards knowing that this is crazy. I mean, I'd say a lot of the guards know. I'll give some figures, right? Across the world now, after a full year of a high R virus that's literally everywhere, right? And we know the lockdowns and masks did bugger all. So it's all over the place. There's around 1 in 3,000 people only that have passed. And that's with an average age around 80 with comorbidities, mostly. If you're under 50, it might be 1 in 50,000 chance you have of passing in that whole year, right? And to be honest, if you don't have comorbidities or issues, it could be 1 in a couple of 100,000. These basic numbers are irrefutable. In Europe, across the whole of Europe, there's less than 1 in 1,000 people. Many countries much lower. This is the extent of the threat. It's a severe flu equivalent. Maybe it has better legs because of the way it's designed. But this is the reality. It is crazy to destroy your economies in the way we've done for that. The second thing is that we have good studies now that indicate strongly that if you suppress in the below 60s healthy people and you try and spancel or reduce community immunity, right, without mortality, you put granny at greater risk over the long term, right? So the people accusing us of putting granny at risk, the supreme irony is their following of the nonsense is putting granny at more risk. So I could go on and I won't, but I just think it's so obvious now, the mistake that's been made, that many guards will just realize it, even if they're not very scientific. Another one I throw out is in Ireland last April, I was saying this to people in May, the Irish grocery workers, indoors, no masks, indoors with a high R virus, 8-10 hours a day, ultra non-lockdown with all the people great unwashed coming in and out. But the store workers showed no signal for infection or certainly mortality. That alone shows you empirically, right, that the lockdown / masks, along with all the published studies, hardly moved the needle. And yet they destroy our society and cause incredible suffering and long-term disastrous outcomes. So long-winded answer, but if people could just realize it's not the complex science that I go through that answers the question that this is profoundly wrong and unscientific. It's not all the complex stuff. Basic logic and empirical visual validation of data, simple stuff, also gives you the answer.
So that begs the question, why does the government continue with a futile strategy when they know it? I mean, let's be honest with you, they are very knowledgeable. They'll have the best experts looking into this. What about Sweden? You know, they would have the numbers on Sweden. They would have all these numbers, yet they continue with this lockdown. Ivan, would you know why they were doing that? Why is that? Any ideas?
I kind of alluded to it earlier in the genesis of this thing. Once it got to April or May and the whole world was copying each other and the West had fallen into anti-science, the die was cast, because there's no way you can begin to acknowledge maybe we were wrong on the effectiveness of lockdown because the price paid was too high. So it's unthinkable. So even the people who believed it at first in political world, and then they began to realize the enormity of the mistake, they're trapped. They can never acknowledge the mistake. So everyone's trapped.
A couple of things. One is I've always sort of wondered, Ivor, as you said there, that, you know, everybody would flock to Dunnes Stores or Aldi, and none of the staff were getting sick. The second thing, I know of a taxi driver who over the last year has calculated that he's had 5,000 people in his cab over the whole year, and he's never got COVID on it as well. And then that opens up that why is our churches not open? You know, our religious services, which they are very far and few between, that the amount of people that they actually get into churches because of what happened in the past, and the numbers in churches are reducing. We know that, but there's probably less people going into a church than Aldi. Okay.
Way less.
These are closed as well. I want to sort of just look at our economy, and I want to look at lockdown. And we know that the building trade basically said to the government, no, we're not hanging on here. We need to open up now, because what's happening in Ireland, people within the industry are going to England and they're going to the Middle East to work because they can't survive on the income, the pandemic payment that they're getting here, which then is going to leave a bigger gap within the country.
Sponsored by the Dún Laoghaire Rattown Local Enterprise Office. You're listening to Business Eye on Dublin South FM.
Are we at a stage that we will be opened up in June and everyone's going, brilliant, great? Will we be locked down for 4 weeks? And if that happens, I've had people who've said to me, no, I'm not putting up for that. I will ride this out to June and then I'm done. And then I'm done with it. How do we get our economy? How do we get our economy back? How do we get our economy back up and running? Do we need a new election? Do we need an election? Do we need to?
Straight away, the first thing that we need to do.
Yeah.
People do not have to be brave with this. All you have to do is if you're a business, retail business, open up your doors right now. Just do it. If you're a business, an essential business, like whatever you're selling, an essential business, take off the mask and take away all that paraphernalia, that medical theatre that we're all under. And it is medical theatre. All people have to do is do what we did in the pre-revolution times when we were fighting the British. Non-violence, just do not consent and live your life as if that doesn't exist. Because if you do that, we're going to start opening up. We're never going to get back to tourist industry for a long time because, you know, that's absolutely dead. The fear in the world.
It's interesting. You know, I did my research. Ireland is the most locked down country in the EU and the fourth, I think it's now the third most lockdown on planet Earth. Cuba, and there's a couple others I can't remember. So my big question, and you mentioned politics, I think, Joe, and I'm not going to get into politics because I don't care about politics.
No,
but it's interesting, right? Remember the last election? Which was the party that got the majority national vote? It was Sinn Féin, right? And some people would say that maybe there was a bit of a convenient agreement between the two F parties, right? There probably is a concern in politics that if they have an election, it's going to go a different way, right? And so I guess my question is, how is Ireland going to get out of this? How is Ireland, maybe Ivor, how is Ireland going to get out of this?
It will only come from the people, unfortunately. So my understanding of what I've observed to my horror is Sinn Féin are proponents of all this as well.
Yeah.
And you got to remember, the politicians, there's a natural selection of what careers you go into. Very technical people end up in certain careers. Ending up in politics is, you're going to intend to be the least technical person in the universe. It's just the nature of the game, different side of the brain. So you can forget about the politicians. They will never grasp this. And the academia clearly have been lost into a profound groupthink. So the whole political system now is a mess. So I don't think that's the place to go. It's the people. We've probably got 10 or 15% of people who know what we've been saying here, that is profoundly unscientific. Another 10 or 15% who largely know it, but aren't really certain, and they're keeping their mouth shut. But it's still a sizable minority to start leading the way. Yeah. I mean, if you go back to WHO October 2019 guidelines, I've got the link on my website. If we follow broadly what Sweden did, it's still more than is needed because of the science. But at least it keeps your society functioning.
Yeah,
people should be pushing for that.
Yeah,
but we're a small country with 5 million people, and I speak to people on the street. The mood has changed. I know that we know that barbers and hairdressers, and we all seem to go down the road to barbers and hairdressers. These are the people that spent all the money, got all the equipment in, and then they were shut down. But there's the other business as well. Like we know that Amazon is bringing 10 trucks in a day to supply us with all our delivery. We know that I was speaking to some companies, and they said they're busier now than they ever were before. But the majority of businesses are kind of going, oh great, I'm in my pod, but I'm not having a life. So the economy is not just about business. The economy is about joy. It's about us going out and having that coffee. So it will only end. I believe that it, I don't be a political broadcast because I'm not affiliated to any party. It'll only end by grassroots. It'll only end when the citizens say...
What's happening across Ireland right now is a sign. What I did is a sign of it. There are people like me all over this country. Because of what I did, I've been contacted by people and individuals, groups as well, non-political, all over Ireland, who are using me as a lightning rod to come behind me. Now, I'm not political. I'm just a guy who wants to open his shop. But they're sending me information that you should get in touch with this guy. You should see what this guy is doing. And I see, which would be different from the normal people who are watching RT, I see a grassroots campaign and an upsurge of people all over this country that are rising up. And I see it. It's very clear. But it's not organised, and like we have said, it's new and everybody's on a different page on how far along they are in understanding what this
But we're in a recession.
Agenda is the government's agenda.
The word isn't spoke about in our papers. It's not mentioned on the media. We are in a recession, and we are probably in the worst recession we've ever been in, and we're going down deeply.
The national debt of Ireland right now, what is this? 500 billion.
It's the biggest per capita in the EU. The average Irish person owes, I can't remember the number, but
50,000.
Yeah, and there's another, because I looked at this, it's the biggest in the EU, and also it's been the fastest growing debt in the EU in the last year. Yep. It's easy for the government to do that because it's not their money.
Well, is it a case, Ivor, is it a case that you could look at that and go, it's okay, because before we were rapidly growing, money is as cheap to buy now with very low interest rates. So if we get this money in, when we pick up, will we be able to do, because we did it in the last two recessions?
Well, Leo said a couple of months ago, I couldn't believe it. He basically made a comment on the media and just said, it's no problem. We'll just roll on the debt. Money's cheap. We'll just roll it up for the future, which is stunning. It reminds me of McCreevy back before the collapse and the last thing. He said, when I have money, I spend it. When I have it, I spend it. When I don't, I don't. Sure, who cares? Yeah. These people are holding the future of our children, the next generation, and they're squandering increasing debt at colossal levels. They're not just, it's not like a normal kind of recession. They're literally ransacking small businesses and the lifeblood of Ireland. That's being ransacked completely.
Yeah. Hospitality,
it's vandalism.
Tourism.
It's vandalism. It's not just, recession.
Deliberate.
Yeah.
I see huge bottlenecks. I mean, just on the housing front, I heard yesterday that there are 15,000 houses for sale in Ireland, which is the lowest on record. 20 years ago, there were 53 on sale at any one time, 15,000. So there's no property really for people to buy, number one. Meanwhile, they wanted to build 25,000 houses this year. I think they're looking at 16,000. So meanwhile, the population's going up. So where's all this going? Like, it's going to end up in one hell of a bottleneck.
Well, the thing is that they're essentially destroying our societal infrastructure. Yeah. It's not just a hold, or we just need to hold for a few weeks. That's clear. So against all logic and science, they are systematically dismantling our societal infrastructure. Small business is the lifeblood, not just of business in the country, it's the society itself. So everything is being destroyed. And the science clearly says the cost benefit of this intervention is at least 10 times again negative cost to benefit, possibly 50, 60, 70 if you include future suffering and death from lack of screening, depression, and many other negative health impacts. And it's saving almost nothing. We know from Florida opening up on the 25th of September, no mask mandates, all cancelled, no lockdown. They are thriving ever since. And they've beaten similar states who are in hard lockdown with 100% mask mandate.
Yes. Same with Texas.
It's clear.
Same with Texas.
Yeah. Same with Texas versus
well. Yeah.
Oh, no. Here's the thing that people don't understand. If you watch mainstream media in Ireland, you are not going to hear that. That does not exist. Sweden doesn't exist anymore. Neither does Florida or Texas. They disappeared on the world map. You tell people, well, look at Sweden, and they go, what about Sweden? They don't know.
Sweden. A Swedish professor last month, it was covered in the media in Sweden, he did an analysis. The only measure you can use for pandemic impact is excess mortality over normal. They're the lowest third in Europe of excess mortality over normal, even though they didn't lock down, they have no masks. You know, Ireland, looking at the figures here on the screen in front of me, Ireland, the positivity rate had fallen by early March down to 4. It was right down, and it's kept falling down to 3.3 today. I mean, the curve has collapsed naturally as per the last millennium in similar epidemics. And when you look at the ICU, it's emptying out. It's not to do with lockdown. For the last few weeks, people have all been instinctively opening up. And we know it. We hear the traffic on the roads each morning. We see the canals. They're all opening up, but the positivity rate is stubbornly low. And what they want now is to open up many new testing centers to basically mine for cases.
Yeah. They started doing that. That was last week. That's But
here it is.
Free your kids. Come on, it's all free. So that data is going to be used just to show that, to keep us in the lockdown, to show the evidence that cases are up. And that's another thing. What is a case? Like what is a case? That's not a hospital admission. That's often those cases from PCR experts around the world have said that a case can often mean the person has no symptoms whatsoever, not even sick, probably even recovered.
We know that, we've seen, we have seen that, Coca-Cola has tested, or a Kiwi has tested positive for it. But where's it all going? In my own opinion, I believe it's all going towards the financial system. We know that just last night or the night before, the quantum financial system kicked in, or it has been tested. What people don't realize is that the quantum financial system has been running in China for about 10 years through AI. Yeah. And what I'm looking at now, there's 2 quantum financial systems. There's one which is an American one, and there's one a Chinese one. And this is all to do with your credit rating. And we know within China, we can go, if you're good and you cross the road and you jaywalk, you get points taken off you. We know that in China there is this state of state over religion. We know that the people in China believe the state is a religion.
Yeah. Cool.
Is there a sort of a sense that, and the Chinese have been planning stuff for a very, very long time, the CCP for a very long time. Is it a case that this is, some part of this is trickling in to our economy? I'm going to throw it out there, what was happening, because for years we've just been printing money, quantum of easing, and it had to stop somewhere. When COVID came, they went, great, we've just got an opportunity to do what we wanted to do, and 10 years down the road, we can shove it now. Simon, I'm going to throw that to you.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to see. It's funny, I went along with this for about a year, right? And I just naively assumed that, the government knew what they were doing. But I've worked in China, and I'm listening to Ivor, and I'm thinking, the only way we can come out of this is if people really just, as you said, Adi, just quietly and carefully just kind of lead us out of this, because I can't see how governments are going to do it. I can't see how they're going to do it now.
Bravery. Are people getting brave?
Step out there, open your shop. Just open your shop, open your business, take an apprentice, get back to culinary arts, go back to music. Nobody. My daughter, she loves traditional Irish music. There's an example. She hasn't had a lesson in a year. Like the guy she was learning from, she learns tin whistle. There's a place down there called the Shanachie. We'd all come together. It was just wonderful. That whole cultural thing is dead, and we need to get that back. And it's been kept down because of fear.
Yeah, again, ransacking, vandalism is the only word you can use when it's unscientific. And you're absolutely right. People don't seem to realize they've taken away your small businesses. They've taken away your culture. They've taken away your mass if you're religious. They've taken away your cup of coffee, your restaurants, your pubs. They've taken away your freedom. Your inalienable right to travel has been taken away down to 5 kilometers, which is just risible, et cetera, et cetera. Everything's been taken away for a disease that currently, after a whole year in the world, 1 in 3,000 people have passed at an average age around 80. And I think that the elderly, if they were properly informed, they would say, not in my name. Yeah. If they knew the figures that I know and we know, and they looked at it and realized that in this winter wave, in early March, the mortality was right down to normal, and it wasn't actually much extra mortality over 17-18 season. I mean, it's only a few hundred people on the RIP charts. If they knew the reality, they would say, I'm heading towards the grave, and you're ransacking my world as I leave it. My children, my grandchildren, you're taking everything away and destroying it just as I check out in my name. You're doing... Now, they would have to understand the data to be able to say that. But if they understood it and they weren't propagandized for a full year, they would say that, unless they're evil. Unless they're evil, they would, as a group, say that.
The one thing that I want to just make a statement is people need to start talking. People need to start talking. The only way lockdown and distance have stopped people communicating. Masks have stopped people communicating. Yeah. People need to start talking again. And when people start talking again, we will figure this out. There's multiple groups online. There's multiple people chatting, and this is happening. And the more the people talk, the more people will awaken on it. Yeah. So on that note, Simon, I know you have to fly. Guys, give me what your thoughts will be and how we can fix this moving forward. Ivor, start with yourself.
Okay, so I'll restate. Around 1 in 3,000 people passed with this disease. It's a severe flu equivalent approximately across the whole world, and very advanced stage generally, and comorbidities. We have overreacted enormously. The lockdown science shows it doesn't function. It's very ineffective, and the cost benefit of lockdown and mask policies are probably 50-1 in the negative against. The other thing I'd say is, if we wanted to try and test and trace, even though 2019 WHO guidelines says no point once it's entered the country, there's no point test and tracing. But if we wanted to, rapid antigen tests, They're around 25 times better than doing no testing. PCR is maybe 30 times better than doing no testing. In other words, they're essentially the same. Rapid antigen is $10. It takes a few minutes, and you could open up all our businesses, all our workplaces, all our travel with simple rapid antigen or repeated rapid antigen simple tests. And that's being suppressed. So that would open up everything. I would say you don't even really need that. You just need to follow the 2019 WHO guidelines with washing your hands, keeping some reasonable distance, and shielding the susceptible, which is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Exactly. And my thoughts on this is, I'll just say this. If people could just go outside and open up your shops, open up your business. If you're in an essential business, get rid of all that medical theatre that you're using there with the perspex on the counters and things like that. Everybody needs to just open up. Simply put, it's not. You don't even have to be brave to do it. Just open up and ignore this government mandate, which has been proven by every scientist in the field to be wrong and futile. Yet we still continue. The government still continues to follow a plan which doesn't work. And you have to ask the question, they know this. Why? Why? Is this not about the virus, or is it about something else?
That's it. And yes, folks, that brings up a question. Are you, lateral thinking or core thinking? Lateral thinking. Don't accept everything at face value and ask questions. Core thinking. Accept everything at face values and go along whatever you've been told. This year, in 1916, 1,200 volunteers went into Dublin and changed the course of history. It is Easter weekend. Jesus also teaches us two things in life: love or fear. Fear is where we sit at the moment, and love is where we all should be, raising that vibration. Today, as it is Friday, have a super Easter weekend. I want you to maybe be a lateral thinker about what we've discussed in this show and start talking to other people, because the more people that talk, the more people that open up, and the more people that question, the better we'll be able to get out of this BS hole that we're in. Until next week on Business Eye, God bless and take care.
Oblocht na hÉireann, the Provisional Government of the Irish Republic, to the people of Ireland. Irish men and Irish women, in the name of God and of the dead generations from which she receives her old tradition of nationhood, Ireland, through us, summons her children to her flag and strikes for her freedom. Having organised and trained her manhood through her secret revolutionary organisation, the Irish Republican Brotherhood, and through her open military organisations, the Irish Volunteers and the Irish Citizen Army. Having patiently perfected her discipline, having resolutely waited for the right moment to reveal itself, she now seizes that moment and, supported by her exiled children in America and by gallant allies in Europe, but relying in the first on her own strength, she strikes in full confidence of victory. We declare the right of the people of Ireland to the ownership of Ireland and to the unfettered control of Irish destinies to be sovereign and indefeasible. The long usurpation of that right by a foreign people and government has not extinguished the right, nor can it ever be extinguished, except by the destruction of the Irish people. In every generation, the Irish people have asserted their right to national freedom and sovereignty. 6 times during the past 300 years, they have asserted it in arms. Standing on that fundamental right, and again declaring it in arms in the face of the world, we hereby proclaim the Irish Republic as a sovereign, independent state, and we pledge our lives and the lives of our comrades in arms to the cause of its freedom, of its welfare, and of its exaltation among the nations. The Irish Republic is entitled to and hereby claims the allegiance of every Irish man and Irish woman. The Republic guarantees religious and civil liberty, equal rights and equal opportunities to all its citizens, and declares its resolve to pursue the happiness and prosperity of the whole nation and of all its parts, cherishing all the children of the nation equally, and oblivious of the differences carefully fostered by an alien government which have divided a minority from the majority in the past, until our arms have brought the opportune moment for the establishment of a permanent national government representative of the whole people of Ireland and elected by the suffrages of all her men and women. The provisional government, hereby constituted, will administer the civil and military affairs of the Republic in trust for the people. We place the cause of the Irish Republic under the protection of the Most High God, whose blessing we invoke upon our arms, and we pray that no one who serves that cause will dishonour it by cowardice, inhumanity or rapine. In this supreme hour, the Irish nation must, by its valour and discipline, and by the readiness of its children to sacrifice themselves for the common good, prove itself worthy of the august destiny to which it is called. Signed on behalf of the Provisional Government, Thomas J. Clark, Sean Mock Dermida, Thomas McDonough, P.H. Pearce, Eamon Cant, James Connolly, Joseph Plunkett.